he been like this a lot? So agitated?
Sometimes.
Well, I'm glad he has you. It comforts me.
I know he wants the best for you, too.
I'm glad you're here, Kira.
Susan Wozlosnica
Nailed it.
of RogerEbert.com wrote in her review of our feature today, Will, already suspicious, now has his hackles on high alert. When he makes the observation that Eden, David, and their fellow cult members are weird, a fellow partier replies, yeah, they're a little weird, but this is LA. They're harmless.
Let the movie speak.
Welcome back, everybody. We made it to the end of this not long dinner party series. I kept forgetting how to add. If you were listening to the second, third, and fourth episodes, I kept trying to figure out when we were close to halfway, and then when we were halfway. We're way past halfway now. This is the end. As far as I know, the sixth of a group of six of something.
This is the last one.
This is the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Absolutely.
you for confirming that for me. I'm Travis.
I'm Annie.
And we are going to round out this series today and then probably take a little break before we move on to our decade series on the 1960s. Just a reminder to like and subscribe, do the social media thing, tell someone you like the show, comment on an episode. If you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, those reviews matter to some algorithm somewhere. And it means when people search for a movie podcast, the more reviews we have, the more likely they are to find our show and maybe fall in love like you did. Oh, and to help you fall in love more with what we're going to do in the future, we're going to give you another little sneak preview at the 60s series. And last week, we gave you a single kind of one-off selection. What are we looking forward to covering in the 60s? And I think Annie mentioned High and Low, which is a Kurosawa movie. And I mentioned Blow Your Horn. Come
Yes.
Blow Your Horn.
That is what you claimed to be looking forward to.
Yeah, I forgot the name of it because it had been renamed. And then, no. Anyway, those are two. This is a list of a nice round number of 13. So Annie, what are you gonna tease people with this week? What else on the list are you looking forward to covering that maybe you haven't seen before?
Well, so last week I said Kurosawa because I'm a nerd.
Yes.
But in a very different vein, I'm also looking forward to seeing Planet of the Apes because
Hey.
I haven't.
Yes.
And I feel like as a person in this culture, I
Yes.
should know what that thing is. So I'm actually looking forward to it, and I am enjoying making some popcorn and
Watching them apes.
watching that
They're like
thing.
on horses and stuff.
That's crazy.
I am excited. I've never seen the original. Yeah, I won't tell you now,
Okay.
but I am aware of a piece of the ending of this movie.
Okay.
I hope you don't become aware of it until
All right.
it happens in the movie.
I am aware of a couple things, but I think the stuff I know about is at the beginning.
Okay, so you all heard it here first. Annie doesn't know about a thing that happens at the end of Planet of the Apes, and she's going to not figure it out before we get there.
We're going to have to get moving on this list.
Yes. Okay, so Planet of the Apes, that's coming up. The original, not any of the new ones that you might have seen in theaters at the time of recording this one. Justin talked about it a couple weeks ago. The other movie that I will select today that I'm looking forward to watching is, I'll just pick another left field selection here. A lot of the movies on the list are, you know what, forget it. Let's give them the whole list.
Sure.
Let's give them the whole list, and then I'll tell you which one I was going to say. So we're going to start the decade off with a personal favorite of mine. I have not seen any, but maybe like 3 of these. Annie, I don't know about you. Let's read them one at a time, and we'll alternate. Number
I think
one.
I've seen 5.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, number one, 1960, Night of the Living Dead. A personal favorite of mine. I think it's exactly the wrong kind of movie for you, but I think you'll appreciate more about it than maybe you think you might.
Well, I think our
appreciate
conversation today is going to prove that is possible.
about it. Yes.
All right.
Good segue.
There you go.
Number 2.
The second one is Breathless, which is by someone famous. I already forgot.
Godard, French guy.
Oh.
Jean-Luc Godard.
Oh, that's a fancy pants one.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a big deal. We covered Elevator to the Gallows and didn't like it. This is the movie that is like the big French New Wave
All right.
kind of one.
That's good.
Third movie, The Hustler, 1961, starring Jackie Gleason, Paul Newman. It's a pool movie, not like a swimming pool, like balls
Pool
on
hall.
the table, click, clack.
Yes.
I've seen the sequel to this movie, which was directed by Martin Scorsese and also has Paul Newman in it. And it rules, but I've never seen The Hustler. So I'm excited for that.
No, I love Paul Newman, so I'm excited for this one too.
I also love Paul Newman. What's number 3?
Then we are going to watch not Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
No, because the poll. Okay, I just got to call all the listeners out for a real quick second here. I was being spontaneous and I said in an episode, I'm going to put a poll out there and people need to vote on it and then we'll make our decision that way. Do you want to know how many people voted in the poll?
Was it just me?
1.
It was just
and
me.
It was Annie.
And I did not vote for
Chitty
my
Chitty
own
Bang
thing.
Bang. So we're going to watch.
We are going to watch 2 versions of West Side Story.
Yes.
I think what most people think of as the original from 1961, and then also the remake from 2021, 40 years later.
Yes.
That'll be a lot of movie.
And technically that's 3 versions of the same story if we talk about Romeo and Juliet during the episode.
I think I am required to do for at least
Probably.
a minute and a half.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, and then High and Low, which we talked about last week. The next one on there that we haven't talked about is The Great Escape from 1963 with our buddy Steve McQueen. I don't know why he's our buddy. I'm not friends with old Stevie boy.
I don't think either of our lifetimes overlapped with his.
No, I just
No.
watched him in The Blob. He feels like the buddy that I
Yeah.
never knew I had
No.
when I was running from The Blob.
There you go. After The Great Escape, we've got Fistful of Dollars.
Yep.
Does that count as a spaghetti western?
Definitely.
Yes.
It's Sergio Leone.
Well, there you go. We needed a spaghetti western, and
Yeah.
that's the one we chose.
And then Come Blow Your Horn, which is going to be a surprise,
Frank
a
Sinatra.
surprise winner. 1965's Mirage, which this is another kind of weird one,
Yeah.
but looks like kind of a fun spy
Kind of
espionage.
James Bond-ish
Yeah, maybe like a.
style.
Well, this is the mid 60s, so like Bond's getting big.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then next is an interesting
Well,
one.
so
This is the one I was
we-
going to mention, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Like, go for it.
So we like Hitchcock,
Love him.
and he has had many appearances on this podcast.
Yeah.
And so we have kind of late in his oeuvre is
Yes.
a movie called Torn Curtain from 1966. And it might be a mess.
It might exist.
But we couldn't believe that there was a Hitchcock that we had never heard of.
Like literally, like never heard of.
Yeah.
Which I
So
feel
we're
so
going to investigate
dumb.
why we've never heard of this thing.
Do you remember who's in this movie?
No.
Paul Newman
Another.
and Julie Andrews.
I get more Paul Newman.
Yes. This is crazy that this movie exists. It's got to be crap. Otherwise,
It's got to be awful,
yeah.
but I'm so excited.
Planet of the Apes, we already talked
Yep.
about. Yay, apes. And then the next one is The Odd Couple.
Because we need some Neil Simon.
Yes. And last but not least, we try to pick decade movies to end the series on that seem like really significant. So if you remember, we ended the 30s series with
Gone with the Wind.
yes,
How good am I?
yes,
I wasn't even on that one.
yeah, yes. We ended the 30s series with Gone with the Wind. Kind of a significant movie. Remains significant. We ended the 40s series with The Third Man, which is
Well, that's a good one.
a great movie. 50 series.
Vertigo.
You and I did Vertigo.
Yeah.
So the last movie of the 60 series, Annie,
2001, A Space Odyssey.
which is a movie that is important.
It's incredibly important, and I haven't seen it. And so I am
Oh.
really looking forward to that one too.
It'll be a good series. I think there's enough fun stuff, a couple weird things, and a couple things I know are good. And I like that mix,
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to what we watched this week. Okay, I'll kick it off because I think mine we both seen and we might be able to speak to. By the way, some of mine, what did I watch this week's are lies.
Well, I think most of us know that.
Oh, I didn't assume everybody assumed I was lying, but that's cool. I didn't watch this week, but I did watch it recently. I'm on Letterboxd. If you want to follow me on Letterboxd, fine. There's like 5 people who follow me. You could be one of the 6. But I watched this a little while ago, caught up with it late. 2001 Space Odyssey. 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 2001 Space O it is another Wes Anderson movie, his latest, Asteroid City. And I think the last time we talked about Wes Anderson on here, I mentioned it's like, I love the way his movies look, but I don't ever feel anything watching them. And I keep trying. Like, they're just too interesting to look at to kind of not give them another shot. And I mean, as per usual, this is a really interesting setup, an amazing like setting and just like designed visually movie, and a stacked cast. Like everyone in his movies is just A-lister after A-lister. And then at the end, I'm just like, I don't know what. Like they're just so mechanical feeling. And I kind of felt the same way about this one. Like there are pieces of the story that I really wanted to attach myself to, particularly the like Scarlett Johansson kind of.
Was she playing opposite Ewan McGregor? It's been a while since I saw this.
She's playing opposite Schwartzman.
Oh, okay.
Who's the dad of the kids.
Yeah. That relationship is the closest a bit of humanity possible in that film.
But it's pretty relative, right? Like they're having their conversations like this. Oh, so your wife died. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're a struggling actress who's addicted to barbiturates. That's too bad. It's like, what?
That's sad for you.
Yeah.
No,
so
I think it's beautiful. Asteroid City is
nice
beautiful to look at.
And so like begging to be more fun than it is. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about all his movies recently. It's like your movies look so much more fun than they feel.
Well, do you think that's like not that we like it, but do you think that's what he's trying to do? Like juxtapose the sadness of life with the joy of his visuals?
Must be.
I give people too much credit.
Well, he must be a bummer dude. I never really spent any time watching interviews of him, but like nothing that gets said or gets landed on like thematically in his movies are ever like, and here's why you should have a little hope.
Right.
It's not really how it goes.
No, it's not.
But it looks hopeful and joyful and buoyant and crazy, and I don't know. So anyway, if you like Wes Anderson, you probably will like Asteroid City.
Probably already seen it.
He's super consistent. Like all his movies are crafted so well, but I'm waiting for the Wes Anderson movie that, you know, even in his own way, I don't need him to say it like Spielberg or someone else. I just want him to like say it something that resonates with me at a heart level, not just a brain level. So Asteroid City.
I have made it very clear on this show that I have two lanes I drive in most of the time. One is the Brits.
That's really dangerous. You shouldn't do that.
And
you should stay on the right side of the road.
No, it's like a multi-lane highway.
Oh, but in Britain, they drive on the left side of the road.
See?
There we go.
That's what I meant, clearly. So I watch a lot of Brits, but that's not what I'm here for today. I also really like noir and neo-noir.
Yes.
And so I went back to revisit a film I watched eons ago called Hollywoodland, which 2006, which is neo-noir, absolutely. It is telling two stories at the same time. You start with the death, and this is a true story, real life, the death of George Reeves, who was the first Superman on TV. And there is a lot of, to this day, a lot of controversy as to whether or not it was a murder or a suicide.
Is Ben Affleck in this movie?
Yes.
Okay.
He is not why you watch it.
Is he like the...
He is Superman. He plays George Reeves. I was going to get to this. So
I'm sorry. I thought
half of this movie is really good.
I thought he was the fedora guy, like the guy walking around.
Oh, like the detective?
Stuff out.
No, that's Adrian Brody.
Oh,
that's the good part.
Who I love.
So half of this movie is moving forward from the death while Adrian Brody tries to figure out what happened. And then the other half of the movie, intertwined, is the flashback to tracing the Ben Affleck, tracing him,
tracing the Ben Affleck,
tracing him,
in chalk on the ground,
coming towards his death.
Yes.
Right. And I just think Ben Affleck is, I don't know what it is. I can never see anyone other than Ben Affleck. Like he's too much of a movie star or not good enough of an actor or something where all I see is J-Lo and like she doesn't belong in this film. So I really like this movie as noir, and I really like the Adrian Brody half of it.
He's great.
He's amazing.
Also in Asteroid City.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
He's really good. But if you can handle the Ben Affleckness of it.
Who's the broad? Who's?
Oh, it's
who's like
Diane Lane, and she does a really good job too.
I like Diane Lane.
And Bob Hoskins is in it.
Love
also.
Bob Hoskins.
And there's the cast list goes on and on. It's
pretty
lots of
stacked.
Yeah.
Okay.
But those are the leads.
That's one of those movies I remember like grabbing off out of the like $3 or $5 bin at Blockbuster and being like, this looks so cool. I don't know if I ever bought it, or I feel like maybe I watched it, but I vaguely remember the Ben Affleck and vaguely remember the Adrian Brody.
I mean, this is no Chinatown.
Yeah.
It's not even in the same sentence.
It's like real pastiche-y, like
and
laid on really thick, right?
It's more fleshed out, both the characters and the plot, than a classic noir would be. But anyway.
Kind of worth it.
I like it as a popcorn movie.
All right. Well, speaking of popcorn movies, I don't think they eat any popcorn in this movie, but this movie, I think given a bigger budget and a wider release, probably would have been going for a popcorn audience sort of demographic. We are going to sit down and discuss a very dinner party movie, but not like anything else we talked about before. It's called The Invitation.
Sorry, I'm not usually late.
Isn't this Parisian consomme a little thick?
Imagine if we didn't bring the wine. We'd be shunned by society. Outcasts! Where's your wine?
Mom, calm down. The party's not for another 3 hours. Oh, good. That will give me time to add another coat of glaze to the ham.
You wouldn't understand, but one fiasco dinner party can open wounds that may never heal.
Okay, this is, I gotta say, I saved this one for last in some ways because I have seen it. I knew I enjoyed it. But the other reason is I knew you hadn't seen it, and I didn't really think you would enjoy it. So The Invitation is a 2015 or 14, depending on where you're looking, because it's one of those festival
Or 16.
movies. Or 16. Oh, maybe it's 15 or 16.
15 or 16.
Yeah. So it's one of those festival movies, never got a big wide release, but was well reviewed at the time it came out. The things worth noting about it, production history wise, are it's directed by Karyn Kusama, who is a name that I keep hearing things about in the sphere of like podcasts and like a sort of like movie nerd news that I am privy to. I don't think most people would know this director by name, but she's done some big episodes of TV on some big television shows that you maybe have seen. She's also one of those people that she's always in the conversation for like, oh, great eye, up and comer. When's she going to get that big project? For the longest time, I kept hearing Karyn Kusama is going to direct a Dracula movie, and it's going to be like the big Universal monster, whatever thing of this year. And then it just like fizzled out, never happened. But like having watched this, does that make a little bit of sense to you?
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I think so too. I think she's a very sharp director. This stars Logan Marshall Green, who I think is the poor man's Tom Hardy, but he is, in fact, not Tom Hardy.
Yeah. Neither is he his co-star, whose name, if it was in English, would be Michael Hausman, but it's Dutch, so it's
Michiel Huisman.
There, let's go with that. Who I know, he made a bunch of.
He's in a lot of TV, right?
He's in a lot of TV. I think he's Game of Thrones, very Game of Thrones.
He is very Game of Thrones.
He is also
he's extremely Game of Thrones.
He has made several romantic comedies.
Yeah,
but yeah, he's kind of. Big face in TV, small face in the movies kind of guy. Yeah,
there's one other face in here you definitely know, and then there's a bunch you don't. So it's a festival movie, which means it's like relatively low budget, not some ginormous name director that you've heard of, and it exists to be sort of a, this is not made primarily to make money, but just to be a good, critically well-regarded movie. What kind of movie is this, Annie?
This is a you kind of movie. This is a horror movie, and which is not my genre. You are correct. However, there is, we always do all the spoilers.
Yeah.
But
for this conversation though, we are going to go at a very specific point, and then we will put a big spoiler wall up.
Okay.
So give us the log line of the movie. Like you don't have to read it.
Just
one or two sentence.
A man and his girlfriend.
Yes.
Are invited to a dinner party at his ex-wife's house.
Correct.
Which is the house they shared together when they were married. And he goes.
And things happen.
And things happen.
Yes. Mostly bad things.
Almost entirely bad things.
Okay, that's what this movie is, what it's about. It's kind of a drama. It's kind of a mystery. It's got some definite horror elements, I would say. And it's definitely about a dinner party, a special kind that I hope I never get invited to. So let's break down each course that this movie has to offer in our section on the review section. We're going to talk about the movie. It's called What's Cooking?
Crisp up those guts. Drag those chickens. Slow them down just a little bit. We're a little ahead. Where are the apples? Still now? Do you still have them raw? Well, slice them up. Let's get them in the pan.
Don't put too many onions in the sauce.
What is this divine-looking amuse-bouche?
If I tell you, I'm afraid you won't even try it.
If everybody would please take your seats. Dinner is served.
All right, so we gave you the plot. That is really all you need to know about the story setup. The setting is kind of important, I think.
Very.
This is in the LA hills. This is such an LA movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice when you can make your low budget festival movie purposefully take place in LA because that's where 95% of them are going to be shot anyway. So a big kind of a swanky, like,
it's the hills, Hollywood Hills.
yeah, but it's not like the house next to OJ's mansion or something. It's a little bit more modest than that, but in a very wealthy neighborhood. I watched this movie for the first time pretty close to when it came out. Like no one saw it in theaters, but I saw it like probably in 2016 or 2017 and really enjoyed it. Sitting next to my wife, Morgan, who really didn't enjoy it because she doesn't like being scared. How do you feel about being scared?
You already know the answer to this question.
Like?
I do not like being scared.
Yeah.
I don't find that entertaining. But I will say that this film is bumping up against a genre I do like. And if this isn't too spoilery, it has some vampire imagery. Can I say that? Is that okay?
You can. I don't know where you're going, but I'm interested.
Well, I'm a 90s kid. Like, I grew up on Buffy and like the Lost Boys and like to me that is an entryway.
Do you like vampire
this.
stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I
don't like being scared, but you like vampire stuff.
Yeah, because they're not scary.
Hot take.
Okay. So, but this is the argument. So part of this, dear listener, is that this is a conversation Travis and I have had many times. But you remember my response to Jaws?
Yeah, you were like, it's a great movie, but it's not scary.
So see, this is
It's basically like a swimming vampire. I don't know.
No, but this is my point. Like, I don't like being scared, but if I don't find the movie scary, then
like Jaws.
Like Jaws.
Like
I was
most of the known universe.
So I think I like kind of that Victoriana stuff.
Yeah.
So whether you're talking about Jekyll and Hyde or Frankenstein or vampires, like I like all that stuff. And so when there are shades of that in this, like that's my entry. Like, that's the way I can enjoy it.
Well, I can't wait to hear about that because I don't have anything to say about vampires, but it's going to be fun. Okay, so let's talk about the cast. I think this will be a quick one because, it's not full of Tom Cruises. But Logan Marshall Green plays the lead. He's got most of the screen time. His name is Will. He has a girlfriend named Kira, who's played by someone whose name you wouldn't recognize if I gave it to you. And then the ex-wife's name is Eden, and she's played by Tammy Blanchard, who is the poor man's Liv Tyler.
Something like that.
That's who she looks like to me.
Yep.
So we have poor man's Tom Hardy, poor man's Liv Tyler. And then a bunch of people who are just a little bit actors, kind of character actors, and then one guy whose face you recognize from something somewhere, John Carroll Lynch.
He's probably a DA.
A DA?
Like a
district attorney?
Yeah.
Like on Law and Order or something?
Sure.
Yeah. He was Drew Carey's brother in the Drew Carey Show.
Well,
that's a pop culture reference.
I was watching Buffy.
Fair enough. He's also in Zodiac. He's a really good character actor.
He's really good, and he's been in like every TV show ever.
Yeah, he has a lot of credits. So I would say, I'll get this out of the way. The acting is good. I think especially Logan Marshall Green and John Carroll Lynch. I think the ex-wife's pretty good too. I think her new boyfriend, whatever, husband, doesn't really come up.
He's
pretty good.
He doesn't have much to do in this film. Or he only has like 2 notes to
He's
play.
got a couple notes. Yeah, they're all fine. There are some moments in the first act where you're getting introduced to people, and it's that thing where you're watching a movie and like the guy comes into a party and it's like, oh hey, it's you, and so the camera kind of swings around and you go one by one and get a little sense of who each of these people are. This movie's not going to win any dialogue brilliance awards.
No.
It's just fine.
Yeah.
It's like serviceable. Some of those readings here and there from the friend group are not Oscar worthy. And they're just like, that's an actor trying and they're doing an okay job trying, but it doesn't all feel like perfectly authentic and amazing. None of that matters to me in the end.
No.
But it's true. So like the acting's good when it needs to be.
Yeah.
And the story starts and they're driving to the party. And I think in some ways the script is nice and economical because you get some of the exposition in a way that feels reasonably natural. And then the opening scene is him accidentally hitting a coyote on the road, which interrupts their conversation in a really jarring, effective way. And he has to go out and take a tire iron to the coyote's head.
Well, it's been injured. It's dying.
Yeah, he's not just doing it for fun. Like
no, and he's clearly shaken up by it. And
yeah, he's not like, woohoo, I get to kill another coyote.
No.
That's the whole setup. The party starts and everybody's sitting around and it's clear they haven't heard from this guy in a while. They haven't seen him. Something happened. I think it's pretty early on. Like it might even be in that initial conversation with the girlfriend where he's talking about like, I'm not sure I'm ready to go here. You get a sense that something happened,
right.
Something traumatic happened. And what does that thing turn out to be?
Well, their son died in the house. Did he drown in the bathtub or something?
Well, I don't know if it's in the house. The son died at a party and there's a baseball bat talked about. And then later at one point he says like they were just playing. I should have been watching, but him and his friend were just playing. And he says he loved this kid. So it's nothing malicious. It's a total freak accident.
Right. Yeah.
As he moves through the house, as the story gets kind of paid out little by little, every kind of new place he goes, there are these pretty tasteful flashbacks. I feel like flashbacks can be really annoying.
Right.
Like voiceovers can be really annoying. But these are interesting. Like every time he gets to the sink and he remembers teaching his son how to wash his hands or whatever. So this is like definitely one of those thriller, spooky kind of horror movies that is like not trying to exist just to go boo, but it's trying to tell like an emotional, thematic story at its core. I think that's what's most interesting about it to me. Like, I think the third act stuff, which we can get into, is effective and well done. But I really like what it has to say about grief, especially the trite kind of truisms that are kind of lobbed at him over and over again. You know, some of his friends are well-meaning, but they're saying things that hurt still. And then there's these other people in the story, his ex-wife and her new boyfriend, being two of them, that the things that they're bringing to the table to try to deal with this grief that he's clearly feeling, they're just hollow, you know? And it's sort of like if a Hallmark card was really horrifically written, right? If it's like, I think one of the lines that I'm remembering early on is like, pain is optional. That doesn't help anyone anywhere.
Well, and I think when you say this is a consideration of grief, they are having a very specific, essentially denial reaction.
Yes.
And so, but they're doing it in a kind of over the top way.
And the over the top way is the entrance of Pruitt, which is John Carroll Lynch's character. He comes in. There's two people at the house that he doesn't know.
Meaning the lead character.
Yeah, Will. So he walks in. He's feeling weird because it's ex-wife and bad thing happened, and that's just an uncomfy. This movie gets at the uncomfortable dinner party thing in a very different way than something like August Osage County. Some of the same ways and some very different ways, which is just I don't know, coming back to the house where he built a family and then that family fell apart. But when he walks in, he looks down the hall and he sees a person he does not know. He doesn't recognize her face. All these other people are clearly longtime friends and whatever. He doesn't recognize her, and then she pops out later and kisses the boyfriend, the new boyfriend, on the cheek. And it's just this weird moment of like, what was that? And then John Carroll Lynch enters a little bit later, and he just has a presence to him Like as an actor, as a character, the minute he enters the scene, you're like, that's a big scary man.
Yes.
Says very little, and then they start to talk about how they got to know each other. The four of them: the ex-wife, the new boyfriend, the woman he doesn't know, and
the big scary man,
Big Boy Pruitt.
Yeah.
And that has to do with their time in Mexico.
So I think I know where you want the spoiler curtain to come down. So
yes,
so I think this is before then. This is what I mean by vampires. So
sorry, Sally forth. I wasn't ready for that, but now I am.
In the script, it's a cult.
Correct.
And it's a cult that is somehow offering connection with those who have died. And it's like a suicide cult sort of thing. And
yeah, it's kind of
encouraging people to, take their own lives in order to meet their departed loved ones. And you kind of get the idea that the big scary man, he has some sort of leadership role, or he is the big guy. It's unclear of this thing. And for people who watch cult documentaries, you know that's usually the guy who's taking all of the wealth of the people he's manipulating. But a lot of the imagery is vampire imagery. So like when they walk in, so he's killed this coyote and he walks in, and I think it's his ex-wife like licks her finger and just like wipes the coyote blood off his cheekbone and eats it or whatever.
That.
And the way, and they've got their canine teeth are prominent, and the way they're dressed in the in like the long flowing black and white dresses is very vampire-esque. And so this whole time I'm watching this movie,
waiting for fangs.
I am waiting for it to fully become a vampire movie.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I like about it a lot is that it like the tropes show up on screen and then leave before they're fully realized. And you just have these vampire tropes like show up and leave and show up and leave and without ever getting committed to. And I think that's a good thing. And so that's when you say her name came up to do Dracula, I'm like, well, yes.
Well, duh.
Clearly.
Okay. All right. I think it's time to put the spoiler wall up.
Okay.
If you haven't seen the movie, I recommend stopping and then going to watch the movie and then coming back and listening.
All right.
Here's the spoilers. Ready? Here we go. Spoilers coming. Here come the spoilers. Here they come. Okay. So you already mentioned cult, which isn't really a spoiler. That's pretty clear earlier on. But the thing that I think that's threaded really well in here is there's a common denominator in how they all ended up in this group, and that is that they all experienced some sort of loss or grief. And so it's like this combination of, like you said, cultic elements that are really common and generally true of cults that end in like mass suicide or something. This is all real fun stuff we're talking about tonight, folks. And also self-helpy stuff.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So like there's this self-actualization, almost like Scientology kind of like language of...
Well, and that's where the LA-ness of it all is very naturally represented.
Yes. And all of the people in this story, like their professions are not all explicitly stated, but we know that like one of them is a record producer. One of them is a doctor. One of them is clearly in academia. And so all of these, and not just like they teach 7th grade somewhere, but like college professor.
These are all fairly well-off professionals.
I think so. I think that's what the movie is saying to us. And so that class of person oftentimes is drawn towards systems and communities that offer these solutions to problems. And also those types of people can be very unhappy with their lives.
Well, and they have maybe resources worth collecting. Like, you don't, there's no point in stealing
like blood from their necks. Yes.
There's no point in stealing the bank account of someone who doesn't have anything in that bank account.
I tried that several times. It's really not worth your time. Okay. So when does the tension start ratcheting up? Pretty steadily.
I mean, it starts with the coyote.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like a lot. There's so much groundwork in this movie. If Babette's Feast's groundwork was like, oh, let's lead up to the dinner, and this one's like it does lead up to the dinner too. But the whole time, what I feel like is happening really well is he is displaying and illustrating a trope, which is sort of a literary trope as well as a cinematic trope. And you see it a lot in horror. You can go back to like the original Twilight Zone and see some specific examples of this, but also lots of movies. Some when we covered on the show, Cat People being one of them. The hysterical woman, right? It's like oftentimes in early 20th century stuff, mostly before civil rights movement and women's rights, I think, became a bigger thing. This was like super ubiquitous.
It came with the rise of Freud and the the psychology kind of blended with it.
Yeah. And so there's a woman at the center of the story who's running around telling someone, I see a ghost, I see a ghost, I see a vampire, I see whatever, murderers after me. And they're like, what are you talking about? There's no one there. And the more she panics, the more it's like the Chinese finger trap of tensions, right? He is that character in this story, right? He's like, something's not right, right? And like at first he thinks it's just him. And he keeps trying to talk himself down. Other people keep trying to talk himself down. And it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds until he starts seeing these signs they show the video of the woman dying and everybody's at peace about it, but they're all sitting around this woman as she dies. It's a little weird, but then people just get over it because it's a dinner party. There's nice rolling kind of pacing to like, how much can humans take of weirdness?
Yeah. And you have a couple moments where you think, oh, this is it. And then, the story pulls back a little bit, gives the lead character a reason to doubt himself so that the tension can rise
There's
even
a
higher.
lot of instances of that. What's a good example is when the guy Troy hasn't shown up. Where's Troy? He was supposed to be here early and blah, blah, blah. And so finally he walks out to a part of the yard, the only part of the yard where they can get cell phone service. Which is nicely accomplished. Whenever you do a horror movie in this day and age, the question is, what do we do about cell phones?
Yeah.
They solve all of the problems of an old school spooky movie. So a lot of times they'll just say, well, this is a period piece.
Yeah.
Don't have cell phones. In this case, they went immediately. It was like, oh, sorry, there's no reception up here.
Which you believe because they're up in the hills. And
that happens like where we live.
Yeah,
where there's
for
hills.
Sure. For sure.
Okay, so he gets the voicemail and the guy tells him he's there. And yet no one's seen this guy. And so immediately he goes in, he goes, where is he? Where is he? He starts freaking out. It looks like this is what this movie does really well. It builds up these awkward moments that you think are like, that's insurmountable. I would leave. And of course, a lot of us would. But then somehow they make you buy the like, give him a minute, let him calm down. You know what I mean? So the inside, you're like, don't calm down, run. And so he's freaking out about the guy who's not there. And then the guy, ding dong, shows up at the front door. And so he looks crazy.
Yeah.
I think that those sort of little builds and sort of releases of tension are done really well. And then the moment that really matters is after they eat their food, which we'll wait for the timer to go off to discuss the food because such is our way around these parts. What about this movie, it not being in your preferential wheelhouse?
Right.
What were you appreciating about it? What did you hate about it?
Well, I don't think I hated anything.
Okay.
I will admit, I do not like being scared. I think that this movie, horror's not my genre, so I don't know, but I feel like this movie's trying to do more than most horror movies. In what you've already said, in that it's trying to comment on grief, and the director, which I'm not sure I buy this, but the director says that this movie is, and I quote, a metaphor for anxiety and the feeling of threat from everyone.
That sounds like
a
canned answer.
Yeah, that sounds a little shallow.
I think it's about more than that.
I think this is more interesting than that.
Anxiety. I mean, anxiety is,
yeah,
we all have anxiety.
Yeah, I don't know. But I do think that by giving these characters complicated backstories, emotionally complicated backstories, it matters more than a average slasher flick.
Oh, sure.
And so that's what I liked about it.
And it, weirdly, truth tells. I feel like, I don't know if it's really trying to do that, but I think it just does sometimes. Like we talked about in Babette's Feast, how like the themes are in the dialogue. And so it's kind of a dumb movie to be like, what's it about, when they're like clearly stating it.
Right.
And this is a little fable-y in the same way. It's a little bit like metaphorical, or like, it wears its themes on its sleeve, like in a way that like I think is fine because it's a bit pulpy. But the insidiousness that they depict these people's answers to their grief with, I think is really interesting, where it's like they're vilified from our protagonist's eyes. Immediately he's creeped out by the big guy. He doesn't like how his ex-wife is acting. He finds the pills in her side drawer. He's obviously uncomfortable with her new boyfriend, which is like, you know, normal and human and whatever, but also it's more than that. He wants to take the key out of the door and leave it locked instead of leaving it in the, you know, all that stuff. And so that is like its own creepy layer, but the stuff that they're saying is so like dumb. You know what I mean? Like it sounds smart, but it's really a vacuum of anything. Like saying things like, I'm free to forgive myself and so are you. It sounds nice, but then you think about it for 2 seconds and you're like, what good does it do for me to forgive myself? That's valueless. And so I think that's like most movies are not going to be like, all self-help is pretty shallow and not that much worth your time. Right. But this movie kind of does it without trying.
Well, and I'm gonna be boring and come back to vampires, which is it's about sucking the blood out of the victim, and you get the idea that these two men, the big scary guy and the boyfriend, are sucking the life out of the other people or the people under their control. And whether that's their soul or their spirit or their money or just their very lives, these two men seem to be harvesting some sort of energy, power, life out of the other people. And of course they use the language of cult, which, you know, is probably more interesting or works better for the context. But I think it is saying a lot of the same things that the old vampire movies were saying. Not all of the same things, but some.
Yeah. It's very modern, you know, that vampire imagery that was totally lost on me because I'm not like a big vampire guy. It's probably there to draw those lines for people like you, but not to be distracting. Because I look at this and I just see like how, it's heightened and it's pulpy and it's a genre movie, but it's like freakily accurate if you've ever watched a couple cult documentaries. Like all of the ingredients are common, right, between all of those stories. If you go back and you look at the time frame of how this started and who led it, and like you said, like getting the resources and then how they all died, you know, when it kind of ran its course. That's all the same, and it feels very like prescient about what it's doing. But that's just one level. Like what I like about this is it's very much two things. It's very much that like ratcheting up the tension of that story. The scene in which that really like cranks into high gear is he goes into his son's room. What I love about the movie from a filmmaking standpoint is really nicely shot, like shot and lit. It has this very particular palette where like the house has all these, it's kind of a mid-century style house where there's like wood paneling in lots of places, and everything's very like warm and reds and browns. And then he's standing outside his son's door after his big freak out. And he goes in, and as soon as he enters, it becomes a flashback. And it goes from like warms to like cold, like light of day and like blues. And then he's looking at his son. There's some really cool tricks like that. But every time we cut to him, he's alone. Like every time they're in this conversation, he finds reasons that are very believable to like retreat. I need a minute.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here because either I'm uncomfortable by the situation as it sits, or I'm comfortable because these people are freaking weirdos.
Right.
And he keeps retreating to different parts of the property, the house, the outside, whatever. And it keeps cutting back to him alone in frame, alone in frame, alone in frame. And sometimes people enter his aloneness and they try to say like, hey, I've been thinking about you, and, you know, all that stuff. I just think that visual over and over again is like this perfect, stark representation of what it feels like to sit in your grief and not feel like anybody can help you.
That actually wasn't as bad because I think you were wrapping it up. So
that was the end of it.
Yeah.
But if I was in the middle, I would have stopped anyway, people, because we follow the rules around here.
Amen.
The rules we make up arbitrarily. The food. The timers for the food. What do we think of the food?
All I remember is the wine.
Yeah, they do. Okay, good story point though. The wine comes into play early on. It's one of those situations where they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is like $1 billion a bottle. You've got to try this wine. Here, have a glass. Here, I'll pour you another glass. Go get a drink." They say it like 8 times to the point where it feels like, when is this going to be a thing?
Yeah. Well,
and at some point it is.
Right.
So the wine. The only thing I noticed about the food in this movie is it all looked very tasty. There's like a big like prime rib or something that's sort of like the main protein, but there were some delicious looking carrots. Stems on.
No, those are the best ones, like honey glazed.
Oh man.
And if there's a couple purple ones in there or a white one,
so good.
You don't want all orange. You need some multicolored carrots.
Whatever cult they're in, I wanted to eat their carrots. That's all I have to say. So, okay, so they plant the seed. It's Chekhov's wine, right? Over and over and over again, and then finally he sort of like pulls it back and decides, I gotta get through this. He has that scene with his girlfriend in which he says like, I love you, but I don't think you can help me. And then they go back inside and another glass of wine gets poured. It's going around the table. Everybody's looking at it. She lingers on it, but she's lingered on that wine glass like a billion times in other contexts. And he looks like he might drink it. And we see one person drink it. And like right at the last second, he flips the crap out and starts slapping it on people's hands, say, don't drink this, don't drink this. And that's when you find out bad things are happening.
Well, and again, it's foreshadowing, right? Because you have, just like with the roast on the table, it's bloody. And now you have red wine flying through the room. Yep.
Also, John Carroll Lynch's character tells a story about how his wife died and how he was responsible because he was drinking and they got into a fight and he hit her. She smacked her head on the corner of the counter.
Yeah.
And then she collapsed dead. And then in this scene, the first person to go down runs at Will.
Yeah.
And Will kind of pushes her off him. She hits the corner of like a whatever and goes down. So it's just there's a lot of nice mirrored like imagery in this. I mean, nice is a relative term, I think, some of these cases. But the third act of this movie is, I would say, a very good payoff. Like this is a movie that does not underpromise. I mean, does not overpromise and underdeliver, rather, but it really gives you what you'd been like grabbing your seat, fearing for the whole time. In that scene where he's freaking out at the dinner table, he's like standing and it's a wide shot of the dining room. All the friends are in frame. He's there and he's like, what is the matter with you people? Why are we being so polite? And he's losing it. And just to the left, like of that big wide shot, you just see Pruitt, the big guy. You just see his arm like in silhouette, just like waiting there to do something. So I feel like all of the third act stuff is pretty well earned. I have a feeling you weren't smiling like I was while it was happening.
No, I probably wasn't. Now, what I was trying, and again, we are deep in spoiler territory. What I was trying to figure out is this one of those movies where everybody kills somebody?
Oh.
And it may not be a 1-to-1, but it's close. Like
it's a bit of a melee at the end. I agree.
And everybody's fighting for their life. And there are definitely people who are primarily protagonists, people who are primarily antagonists.
Oh, yeah.
But when you actually start doing a body count, it's pretty spread out.
And more people survive than normally do.
Yes.
Which I really like about this movie. Normally there's like, your final girl or whatever, final dude or whoever survives and they're just standing on a pile of bodies.
Right, exactly.
This one you have like three people who are, I mean, you notice kind of how disparate they are.
Right.
You know what I mean? That they're survivors, but like none of them are married, none of them have known each other forever, and they're just sort of like looking at the the chaos in the wake of the thing. I think that the proportionality of like third act craziness to ramp up probably makes this a more palatable movie for someone like you. Is that accurate? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I went in knowing what kind of movie it was.
Yeah.
I don't think this movie made me uncomfortable until the very end. And there was probably just like a 5-minute part where I was
they're hiding in the movie theater and he's comes in with the gun.
Yeah. I mean, it was right there at the very, the very end is when I was like, I don't want to be in. I make the tension stop.
Pruitt gets it pretty good.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. That was fun watching him get taken down.
Yeah.
But so no, I don't think this movie. I don't think I was as against it as you thought I might be.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. I mean, maybe it's because they snuck in some vampire nerdery.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you have red wine splashing everywhere, it's like...
Yeah.
There we go.
That's fair. We're doing spoilers, but like one of the things this is just a weird thing. Pruitt gets clonked.
That's the right word.
He did. And then the next thing that happens is the wife, who, like, as soon as the doo-doo starts hitting the fan, she immediately, you can see, she's very well acted now that I think about it. Like, she's kind of one-dimensional, or I don't know if you question whether or not the drugs are doing more work than her actual brain is at some point.
Yeah.
But when things go wrong, right, when it's not like everybody drinks the poison and dies peacefully and falls asleep as she expects, she immediately questions it. And I feel like there's something really cathartic and kind of beautiful about how in her dying breath moments she admits, like, I miss him. Because, like, that's like the whole movie. He's been holding, he says, it feels like I'm holding in a scream, right? Like, I don't know what to do. And she won't give it back to him. She's just like, I'm fine now, you know? And so, I don't know, there's something more pretty to that than there needs to be in a movie like this.
Yeah.
And I also just think it's interesting, she has a gun, and I've never, I don't think, seen in a movie somebody turn a gun on themselves and shoot themselves in the gut, which is so gnarly.
That is not normal.
It was creepy. Like, I mean, I don't want to get too gross or whatever, but, like, there are times in movies where you've seen people point the barrel of a gun at their head, and then whether you see it or not, like, that happens in movies more often than this. She points it at her belly button and then just, like, pulls the trigger. It's
I mean, she points it at her womb.
At her womb, yeah.
You know, I mean, that's if we're gonna get real specific,
Freudian or whatever about it. Yeah.
But yeah, she comes out of her denial there at the very end, which
in
is
a pretty and gross way.
Yeah.
A pretty gross way.
That was, I took very few notes, but my third note was, wait, she wasn't in on it? And I liked that. I liked that they made her a little more, her role in this a little more complex.
She is the person in the cult or the whatever that, like, they're not 100% bought in, but they're projecting that they are.
Well, and I think when they're driving up there, the girlfriend is like, well, you used to live here? And he goes, oh, well, it's all on her dime. So you get the idea that this woman is very well off.
She's well-to-do.
Which means, and she has suffered a great loss. And so therefore she is a prime target for the cult.
Okay, well, let's talk about the ending real quick, because it's kind of awesome.
It's good.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Early on, I don't know, but it's probably like a half hour from the end, even maybe 20 minutes from the end. He is in another space alone, and he's looking out a big sliding glass door, and he sees the boyfriend walk to, like, the far end of the yard and light this, like, old school red gas lantern, basically. Yeah. And or oil lamp or whatever. It's one of those things where he looks at it and thinks, is it one thing? No, I think it's mundane. He's watching him do it thinking, like, this is weird, but then nothing happens. And so he just kind of, like, files it away in the nonsense category. So 3 of them make it out of this altercation alive. And there's a lot of, I would say, like, if you like jumpy, tense things, there's a lot of, like, good, like, you kind of get the geography of the house down by the time you need to know it.
Right.
And then it's Will and his girlfriend, and then one other guy from the party.
It's either the doctor or the doctor's boyfriend. I forget.
The doctor's boyfriend.
Okay.
The doctor goes to help someone and gets stabbed.
I don't remember.
You got to watch the movie. Anyway, those 3 are out there, and they're just sort of like shell shocked, and then they look out, and what do they see, Annie?
Okay, this is what is amazing. Is that they see well,
bats
first off,
and vampires flying into the sky.
Almost. Well, it's 2 things, because it's hear and see. Because our brains register sight first, usually, depending on the thing. But you just see
science.
Yeah, I know. You see red. These same red lanterns are lit sporadically, but pretty solidly
across the hills.
Across the hills, all the way as far as you can see, and then you just hear screams and sirens and the sounds of
faint gunshots,
violent chaos, and you realize that you thought that these 3 had just escaped, but you realize, oh no, they are in the center of a much bigger
does that
violence.
It's such a good, like, capper. Does it do anything for, like, what the story is trying to say. I have that question this time because I loved this movie the first time I watched it and I liked it very much, but it feels like a really executed gimmick.
It made me wonder if it was almost setting up a sequel.
Yeah, but like what, this festival movie that cost $5 to make?
Yeah, I don't think it does anything if we're talking about the life-sucking imagery of cults and vampires. No,
yeah.
I don't think that does anything. But I do think it says something about what a bigger problem this is. Like, this isn't a problem of these 5 people.
Yeah.
This is a societal thing. So I guess
that comes down to like, what is the problem? And if she's saying it's anxiety, it's like, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't buy that. That was a good ending.
It's a good ending.
It's a good ending.
Bob, could you help the carnivore cut his meat?
Wait, let's talk about the elephant not in the room.
How do you take your caviar, sir?
No caviar from me, thanks. Never did like it much.
What have you been drinking, Herbert? Oh, you should ask Tom. He poured it. You weren't trying to poison me, were you?
I drink your milkshake.
Before we get to answering our final 2 questions of the whole series, we've done it, folks.
We made it.
We cleaned our plates. How many of these stupid... They're not even puns. They're just dumb allusions to dinner. How did it taste, Annie? Before we get to the end of this one and give our answer to the final 2 questions, we have to do our due diligence and go to the public and read some bad Letterboxd reviews. Letterboxd reviews. This is the part of the show where I read Annie reviews, and I hope that she laughs. And usually she does.
Usually I do.
This first one is half a star. It's from
Wow.
M told me to get it on Letterboxd.
We'll leave that alone.
Half a star. Here's the review. Bad. Not good. That's the whole thing.
I don't care. You know what else is bad?
Somebody bothered
Your
to
review.
Somebody bothered to write that. Okay, this one's perplexing, and you can tell the people why. Another half-star review. It's a popular place to review this one. I had a half-star for some reason. This is from Kiki. It says, British people, blah, blah, dinner party, yada, yada.
Is it Gosford Park? Like, that's a Gosford Park review.
It's for this movie.
What is she talking about?
There's no British people in this movie.
None.
I don't know what they were watching.
Yeah.
I think they just watched, like they were watching it at 1.5 speed and they just saw people talking for a long time.
That
and must be British.
There are like 7 movies called The Invitation, so.
That's true. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Maybe there's one that's full of British people talking.
There are yada
yada.
Michelle Huisman plays British a lot, but not in this movie.
Okay. Next, 3.5 stars. Okay. So not a terrible review. 3.5 stars. Sure. The username is featuring Dante from the DMC series. That's a username. That's long. Jeez.
Yeah.
3.5 stars, and it says they literally invited the Zodiac Killer to their party because John Carroll Lynch
played Zodiac.
He plays, he's in Zodiac.
Yeah,
he's great in Zodiac.
Yeah, that's a good review.
That's good.
I'll take that.
Last but not least, Tawny writes a 3-star review that says, "I'm so glad I don't have friends." Thanks, Tawny.
That's good.
Ended the series on a good one.
There we go.
So, how often would you rewatch this, Annie?
I'm not watching this again.
Great. Is it worth your time?
Yeah, especially for people who like this kind of movie. I think the ending makes it worth it.
Vampire adjacent.
It's vampire adjacent, which is why I didn't hate it.
Yes.
And the ending is excellent.
Pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. And if anybody's watching horror movies for the acting, they're wrong.
Most of the time, I agree. It's not why you do that. I feel like this is I did about the right amount of time between viewings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that all of the like interaction stuff in this movie is so like neat that I would watch it like more often than what I did. The tension building is really good, and you almost have to forget how it builds in order to make it effective again.
Right.
So I feel like once a year is probably too much for a movie like this.
Yeah.
Once every, 5 to 7 to 10. Like
once you kind of realize you don't remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it stuck in my memory as one of those movies that was like, man, that was like, I was gripping my seat.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like the vaguest reason why, but not the specifics about when it happened or how. So that was good. Like whatever that frequency is for you, if you like these kinds of things, whenever that happens, then you should rewatch it.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth your time for the reasons we've already said. It's just like, it's a good one of those, let's take a genre package and talk about something real in an interesting way. It's not like going to drown you in melodrama. And it's also like the third act pays off.
Yeah.
So if you want
I think it's
the
good
booze,
popcorn. So like if you're looking for a popcorn movie, this is a good popcorn movie, but it's not more than a popcorn movie.
Yeah. It's like, it's a little more, I think,
Excellent popcorn.
Yeah. But like, do most popcorn movies talk about like what it feels like to grieve your dead son? Like, no.
Well,
I mean, I've seen a couple Transformers movies, and I'm pretty sure that's not where they live.
All right.
Okay. Well, I'm full. I don't know about you.
I think we're good.
Pretty full. Done with dinner party movies for a while. Not even sure we could have done like 3 more.
No.
That I'm interested in, but that was fun.
Yeah.
I had fun. I hope
It's a good idea. I think we credit Morgan for that idea.
We do. Good job, Morgan.
That was a good idea.
You would have hated most of these. Join us for the 60s series. It's a fun, eclectic list. I think we're going to have a good time.
And you're making me watch Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, so we're going to go from horror to horror.
There we go.
And I feel nothing. I feel good about it.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Let the movie speak.